Ciao everyone, and welcome to a new episode of the Superhuman Podcast. I am your host, Renato Capasso, and together we will talk about the latest biohacks and scientific discoveries that will turn you from a human into a superhuman. And it all starts now. Hello, my dear biker friend. Today I'm super excited because I'm interviewing Melanie Avalon, and you should be excited too. Melanie Avalon, for me, is a legend in the space. I've been following her for so many years, and in my opinion, she's one of the top and leading biohackers out there. We're going to talk in this episode about a lot of very, very cool stuff. We're going to start talking about Deuterium-depleted water. And listen very carefully to that part because it's going to literally blow your mind. In the show notes, I'm going to touch all sort of studies about it, but it's literally mind-blowing. We're going to talk also about intermittent fasting, how it works, and why it's very good for you and for your body, with some exceptions. And intermittent fasting for women, we're going to talk a lot about it as well. Low carbs, high fat versus low fat and high carbs, and a surprising study that will literally blow your mind. It did blow my mind, literally. We're going to talk about other surprising facts about fats and discuss about many so-called healthy foods. And then we're going to talk also about lung capacity, cryotherapy. Long story short, we're going to talk about a lot of stuff in this episode. So there's going to be a lot to take, but I guarantee it will be worth it. So take your time, listen to the episode, and enjoy to this episode. You're going to bring out a lot of value out of it. I promise. Enjoy. Alrighty. So if you want, we're ready to start. I have so many questions for you. And yeah, I'm very excited. Because you're one of those, I love interviewing people that I know their work and I've been following and they made an impact in my life or in my health. And you're one of those people. If out of all the biohacker community, I think you were the first one that I got to know through her content. You and Jean Stevens through your Intermittent Fasting podcast that I really recommend. But for those people who don't know you, would you like to tell them a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So, well, first of all, I will say thank you so much for having me here. I'm really, really excited. And I remember, now that you mention it, I remember when you first emailed the Intermittent Fasting podcast. I remember your name and it was a long email and it was very passionate. It was very excited. So I just having flashbacks. But yeah, so I am the host of two shows, the Intermittent Fasting podcast and the Melanie Avalon Biohacking podcast. And I also wrote a book called What, When, Wine, Lose Weight and Feel Great with Paleo Style Meals, Intermittent Fasting and Wine. But I'm also a SAG-AFTRA actress. But yeah, my love, people often ask, I often think, what am I? Like, what do I identify as? And I guess now it's biohacker. I've had my own personal health challenges and struggles. And through all of that, I have looked for things to help me personally and just help revitalize my life. And then when I find things that work, I get so excited. I just want to tell everybody about them. So I'm always trying new things and sharing what I've learned with everybody. And that's here we are.
No, that's great. I'm glad you remember that email. Like I was, the passion was not just to try and convince you. It just because it was at that time there was nobody talking extensively just about the topic in the intermittent fasting, and that's how I found out about you guys. I just went on Castbox and typed in the intermittent fasting, and there was no one that was just talking about it. And then obviously, like you said, there is so much more of you. The books which you're next on the line, especially the intermittent fasting book. And what I love about you as well is your skill of building communities. When I joined your intermittent fasting group on Facebook, I was so impressed of how engaged the users are, and how spot on you are, meaning that how you are on top of everything, you're always there. And you're always ready to reply back with information and so on. So this is great. You're doing a very good job.
Oh, thank you. I am so, that's one of the things I'm most grateful for every single day is just the amazing community that I've become a part of. And it's really like you mentioned the Facebook group. So I have three Facebook groups. So one of them, the one you're talking about is IF Biohackers,
Mhm.
Intermittent Fasting plus Real Foods plus Life. And it's funny. So my co-host Jen, who you mentioned, Jen Stevens, she had her own she had a lot of Facebook groups. She doesn't have them anymore, but she would always talk about all the drama in the Facebook group and things that would happen. And my Facebook group, like this community, I think the people who are biohackers, they're so looking at all the different things to, revitalize their life that you can just really tell, like, we don't have a lot of drama. People are always helping each other. People are learning and open and receptive. And it's a really wonderful community.
Oh yeah, I love the. You're right. It's a wonderful community, and I found out that almost right away when I started getting into the game, that even people like you and other like Sean, and so on, they after a while you become almost friends, even by not knowing each other. And yeah, I guess people, Melanie, just are tired of being sick all the times and not that themselves. And when they find out that there is something that works out there, they're happy to share it with the world and help each other out.
Yeah, 100%. Were you talking about Sean Wells?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, I was just talking to him yesterday on the phone. It's so true. Yeah, everybody becomes friends. And yeah, I think because like you said, we're all often, I mean, some people never had their health challenges or were sick and just, wanted to try biohacking from the beginning. But I feel like most of the people had something that they were struggling with and trying to fix. And it's so true. Once you find something that works for you, you just want to share it, or at least I do, and you do. So,
Yeah, I love to share it. And you're right. Everyone, we got one thing in common. Everyone, or most of us, had a big health challenge. Sean had his own health challenges. I had mine. You had yours, and Dave Asprey as well, right? He had, like everyone,
mhm.
we have this thing in common. But then you know what happened, Melanie? If you ask around, and I'm sure you did, for me, when people ask, "Oh, what do you do?" I do podcasting. It's about biohacking. Oh, what's biohacking? And then I'm trying to explain it to them, and it's like tackling the things that are off, that are not considered bad by conventional medicine. That's one of my explanation. I grab attention of everyone, and not because I want to grab attention from people. It's just because I think deeply, like is incredible how so many people are not happy about their health, um, and that's why I think people get curious about it.
Yeah, I could not agree more. It's I think a lot of people like our modern society, I think the baseline of modern society is sick in a way. Like the status quo it's at least not healthy. The status quo is not healthy. So we often exist in a state that we think is normal because it's all we know or it's what is seen as normal by society, when really it shouldn't be that way. And there are things we can do to hopefully change that. And then, go even beyond that with biohacking on top of that. So I agree.
No, that's great. That's great. Just checking. Can you still hear me?
I can. Yes. It sounds better. A lot
Yeah.
better.
Yeah. I just realized that I had the fancy microphone, but then on Zoom I had the computer microphone, and then I just
Oh,
that's
it's
fine.
using my microphone, right?
No, no, I hear you. I hear you better. But my microphone was
Mhm.
I have my
Yeah.
Blue Yeti, but then I needed to select the Blue Yeti from Zoom because it was using the other microphone. But it's okay. Now is all good.
Okay.
What's your definition of biohacking?
I always laugh with this question because I laugh because it's a very simple question. And I don't have an emotional attachment to the question. Like you can call biohacking whatever you want to call it, but I have had conversations with people where it has been very
Mm.
passionate and emotional about what this word actually means. So call it what you want, think of it what you want. The way I think of biohacking is I feel like it is using tools, techniques, supplements, gadgets. I see it as things we would not normally have access to just living our life as a normal person. Um, those things to enhance and upgrade our lives. And the reason I clarify about that is some people will say intermittent fasting is biohacking, or um, I don't like going outside in the sun to get vitamin D is biohacking. And
Yeah.
I don't really see that as biohacking. I don't know. I don't really see diet and just living your life as biohacking. I see it more as supplements and gadgets. And um, so the biohacking version of vitamin D might be, this will be controversial. I probably shouldn't even say it, but you know, a minute or two in a UVB tanning bed, or so like going outside when it's cold because cold is good for you. I wouldn't consider that biohacking, but cryotherapy, I would consider that biohacking. So yeah, that's what I see it as, like gadgets, supplements, tips, tricks, all in order to upgrade your performance and your experience of life.
Look, I agree, and we're on the same page of it. First of all, I think the word biohacking is genius to grab attention. Is almost like a marketing word, but like you said, there is a baseline of things that should not be considered biohacking. For me, that those should be the standard, and then biohacking is doing a step ahead and enhancing your performance with things that you could not normally do without gadgets and other things that came to modern society. So I totally agree with you on that 100%. um, Talking about biohacking, when I reached you, I know you mainly for the intermittent fasting, and we're going to talk about it. But on the through the email, you also mentioned you wanted to talk about the deuterium-depleted water. And when I heard that, obviously it's not the first time I hear about deuterium-depleted water, but I do not know enough. And you definitely grabbed my attention with it. So I said, yes, I really want to talk about it for me to know. And obviously for the readers also for the listeners also to understand. So what is the deuterium-depleted water?
Awesome. I'm so excited to talk about this because I finished when we were talking about that, I was
Mhm.
currently doing a deuterium depletion protocol, which I have since finished. But okay, so deuterium.
Yes.
Deuterium is a type of hydrogen, and there are actually three types of hydrogen. So there's protium. That's what we think of when we think of hydrogen. There's deuterium, which is actually an isotope of hydrogen, and it's heavier than normal hydrogen. And then the third type it isn't really around anymore. It's the type of hydrogen that was created with bombs. In any case, so the normal form of hydrogen, protium, is what our cells, mitochondria, are accustomed to using, because so much of our body is using water for everything. So hydrogen is really important in our cells, mitochondria, for generating energy and just for all of our body's processes. And deuterium is, like I said, a heavier form of hydrogen. And when it goes in our cells, when deuterium goes into our cells, it actually can gunk up our mitochondria, to put it very casually. Um, it messes up the way our cells generate energy. And so it actually can build up in our system. And the people who really research it, so I've interviewed two people, or I've interviewed one person, Dr. Q Collins at the Center for Deuterium Depletion, and I'm going to interview Dr. Robert Slovak, Richard or Robert, Dr. Slovak, as well about this. But the people who really study deuterium, they're pretty convinced that deuterium is a root cause, if not the root cause, of most of the illnesses and diseases that we face today, because it's just wrecking our mitochondria. So the deuterium depletion, you can deplete deuterium naturally, actually through a lot of the things that people are already doing in the biohacking community. So fasting and dietary choices and things like that. But if you want to go really, really intense, you can drink deuterium depleted water. So it's basically water that has had the deuterium removed. So it mostly only has protium. And you drink that for I did it for 2 months, I think. And you test your levels before and after, which I haven't received my tests back from, because I finished it. I haven't received my test back to see how my levels have changed.
Mhm.
But that's the protocol if people want to go really intense. The only problem is it's very expensive water. I was so grateful that the company was sending it to me to try. But yeah, nobody really talks about deuterium, but apparently it's a big deal.
Do you feel the difference now that you went through this protocol?
Yeah. So when I was doing it, okay, it's really hard to know. I get so in my head because there's so many things I'm always trying, and it's really hard to know what's doing what. And the one thing I know is that I know nothing. And I'm not going to go on this whole tangent, but if you research split brain studies, and you see how the language part of our brain can literally makes up stories and ideas to explain reality. Like, our brain is very good at coming up with explanations and reasons for everything. The point of that is I never really know what's doing what. That said,
Mhm.
some things I did notice. I noticed my digestion got a lot better. Um, they said that the amount of water that I would need to drink would go drastically down. And I didn't think that it would, but it did. Like, so when I was drinking normal water, I mean, I would drink it. I went through so much water each day, but when I was drinking the deuterium depleted water, it was way, way less. Um, I also actually, come to think of it, I normally, so drinking wine and alcohol, I normally drink about a glass of wine every night.
I
I
know.
don't normally have nights where I do what you do too.
Um, I do, but I know that about you.
Oh
Uh,
yeah. My dry farm wines. It's very rare that I drink a ton. It's very, very rare. But I definitely had about probably 3 nights or so that just happened to be during the 2 months of deuterium depletion where I drank a lot. And and it really didn't affect me. And I don't know if that was also from part like hydrating with the deuterium depleted water. Um, but yeah, I feel like it made a lot of changes. Again, it's hard to know what's doing what, but the science of it, I'm very much sold on the science of it.
Amazing. So we got, let's say, my understanding for what you tell me is that we got two problems. One, two problems to resolve, right? Is just the amount of deuteriums that enters into our system, which we can tackle by drinking water without deuterium. And then the second part that we can do for those one who cannot afford deuterium depleted water, the second thing that we can do is try and somehow to get rid of the deuterium from our body. Is that correct?
Yes, yes, exactly. And so um like when you're doing the deuterium depletion protocol, it's also it also gets the deuterium out of you because it slowly replaces all the water in your body, basically. But if you can't do that protocol, and actually I had Dave Asprey on my show, and at that time I was drinking the deuterium depleted water, and I told him that's what I was doing, and he he said that he did that, like years and years and years ago. But that like you just said and I just said, it's not usually affordable for most people. Um, so the work you can naturally deplete your deuterium, I need to do more research on it, like
Mhm.
specifically what does deplete it, but I know, so red light therapy actually helps for it. I remember that was when I first interviewed the people at Juve. That was the first time I ever heard of deuterium, because they said that that their devices were good for deuterium depletion. And I was like, what is that word? um, so that helps. But I know fasting helps, your dietary choices. I need to remember what I think a low carb, I don't want to say this wrong, but I
Mhm.
think a low carb diet helps with deuterium depletion. Um, yeah, pretty much if you're a quote biohacker trying to do all the things, that's probably helping.
Mm, okay. It's great to hear that red light therapy helps with getting rid of deuterium from your system. Because I do that every day now, and I would not get back into it. When you say is unaffordable, the deuterium-depleted water, is that because you need a device to create deuterium-depleted water, or you it's just like the bottle that you buy is so expensive?
Good question. Yes, the bottle, the water that you buy. We can't like the technology they use to make it is not anything I don't think that you can buy. Um, so these companies that make it, it, when I was interviewing them, I was asking them how it worked, and it sounds like it's sort of like a molecular distillery, like alcohol, but instead of removing alcohol, it's removing removing the deuterium. And I think the way they do it is that the deuterium freezes at a different temperature than normal water. So that has something to do with freezing it and extracting it. And it's very complicated. But so you buy the water already made and it's expensive.
Like $100 per bottle.
Um, the water I was drinking, I think it was about like $500 for a case.
Oh wow. Okay. Because I was wow. Okay. Because I was thinking, I said, okay, I always try to be mindful for, every type of person who is listening, right? And people who want to start and so on. I was thinking, oh, okay, maybe if it's, let's say, $100, people can buy it and they can drink a little bit of normal water and they can drink a little bit of deuterium-depleted water. Surely it would not be the same, but at least, let's say, the depletion would be cut by half. But I'm sure the price would go down as for, I don't know, gene testing, right? It was six figures and now is $200, $200. So I'm sure with time that technology will go down and so on. So it's good to share it and it's good for people to follow, because I think if we're going to have the same conversation in about 2 years time, we could have a probably way more affordable price on this type of water.
100%. I agree so much. And I was pulling up the website to see how much it actually was because they make it in plastic and in glass. And I I told them I was like, I can really only do it if you send me the glass ones. Um, I can't find the glass ones right now, but for example, like a case of four is 200. But I I agree with what you said so much. I do think, well, I'm hoping that the awareness around it does grow because I do think it'll be something, it could be something like you're talking about the gene therapy and stuff like that, where, the more and more it grows, and if there is more consumer demand, then the price should fall. That's what my fingers are crossed for that.
No, I'm very confident with it. So, I say that because I don't want anyone to be discouraged on it. And usually, we saw it so many times. New technologies, they have a high price, and then with time, the more awareness there is, the price, it's going to be more competition, and then the price will tend to go down. So it's a good information to share for people who cannot afford it. And by the way, I'm going to also put the links of the show notes, and maybe we can put some links on how to different ways to get rid of deuterium from your body. So for those one who cannot get the deuterium depleted water and cannot buy that, and does not make financial sense for them, they can tackle the other way, the detox system and getting rid of deuterium from their body. So that can be an alternative way for now for people to start.
Yeah, 100%. And I don't have a code for them right now. I will. But I haven't recorded the Lightwater is the brand. I will have a discount code once I interview them. But I can also send you, I haven't aired the episode yet with the other scientist, Dr. Q Collins, but when I do, I can send you that link. But 100%, I'm so happy about, yeah, I'm the same way. Like I don't want to discourage people from things because I know there's a high barrier to entry for a lot of these biohacking devices. And I don't want that ever to be discouraging because there's so many things that you can do. So yeah, there's always something you can do.
No, I agree. I know it's so this is still on water, but it's not the Deuterium-depleted water. I know we didn't discuss that on the email, but I was trying to think things that people can try tomorrow, right? So, um, we'll supplementing with hydrogen-rich water. That would be a totally different mechanism, I guess, right? But in a sense, hydrogen is also anti-inflammatory. So maybe this is, if people want to experiment things that they can do with their water, maybe that can be something. Because that way you can just buy the tablets, put it into the water, and and drink it. I know it's not the same, but for people at home, maybe that is something that they can try, and is very powerful for inflammation and anti-aging in general.
Yeah, so that's so interesting because I definitely went through a period of drinking a lot of hydrogen water with a generator that I had at home. And now, and so since then, I've heard things. I've heard a lot of people I really respect being very pro hydrogen water. But then I've heard people I respect not being a fan. And now I'm a little bit confused because I'm like, oh, it's hydrogen water. So is it protium hydrogen or is it deuterium hydrogen? um, and I don't really know enough about the science of hydrogen water generators to know, or the tablets to know if I can't really speak either way to them, but I can say that I've used it in the past. So I know Ben Greenfield loves those tablets. He talks about them a lot.
Oh yeah, I loves them. That's why I think I started getting to know them through him, and I'll have a look. I'll do a research about the type of hydrogen, because yeah, that's when the question arose in my mind when you said deuterium is the bad type of hydrogen, and then I thought to myself, I said, damn it, I'm just getting those tablets every day, so I need to check. But I can tell you that I'll try to be always very careful on and very mindful on how I feel when I do new things and experiment new things. And unless it's purely placebo, I can really tell a difference between when I drink hydrogen rich water. A difference based on inflammation. I have a tennis elbow and other little things, and when I drink hydrogen, they fade away. Those pains fade away.
Oh wow.
Yeah, but I'll be curious to see. I'll do a research, and I'll put it in the show notes if I find anything that tells specifically what type of hydrogen there is in this water, in these tablets, because yeah, I'll be curious to know.
Me too. Let me know. I'll be looking for it.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Do you reckon anything else? Do you reckon we should know about the Deuterium-depleted water?
I don't think so. I think that's the basics.
Mhm.
I do have, like I said, a 2 hour episode coming up on it, but I think we're good.
Oh yeah, then I'll post that link. I think yeah, I'll post that link on, so people, if they want to learn more, they can go on your episode and just learn more about it 100%. That's great though. I'll definitely follow up. In my own research and so on. I'll definitely follow up and post stuff on Instagram and so on. And please, when you have the codes, just send them to me and I'll post them on Instagram.
Awesome.
Yeah, I want them for myself as well.
I know. I know. I will. You'll be the first to know.
Thank you. Thank you. Now, this is a big topic, and I know that you talked about a lot, and that there's going to be a lot of questions that you answer a lot of time, like 1,000 times. But intermittent fasting, I was very excited for this interview, especially for intermittent fasting, and I tell you why. I've changed my mind on intermittent fasting a few times, and right now I'm on a switch of on my routine with intermittent fasting. But before getting into that, for people who don't know, I guess now most of the people will know what is intermittent fasting, uh, but for people who don't know, what is intermittent fasting?
Sure. So there again, there's a lot of debates about terminology, but intermittent fasting is essentially eating in time windows throughout the day. So it's restricting the amount of time that you eat each day rather than the amount of food that you eat. It's also referred to often as time restricted eating.
Mhm.
Um, and so people usually, it's recommended that you fast usually more than 12 hours. They say
Mhm.
they say after 12 hours is when you start entering a fat burning mode. Um, but a lot of people will fast a minimum of 12 hours, but usually a minimum of like 14 hours or so. A lot of people do a 16-8 approach. So they're fasting 16 hours, eating in an 8-hour time window. Some people do a full, you know, I say 24-hour fast, but usually it would be a 23-hour fast because usually you eat for an hour.
Mhm.
So for that, a lot of people do the one meal a day approach. So they just eat one meal a day. That's what I do. I eat dinner every day. But it has an array of health benefits, and you can get a lot of the effects of the health benefits of calorie restriction, which is calorie restriction is the only dietary approach that in clinical studies has been shown to increase longevity, um, mostly in like rodents and monkeys and things like that. But you get the benefits of calorie restriction without calorie restriction because you get all of those benefits from the fasted period. And I started doing it about 10 years ago. And at that time, nobody was really talking about it. And now a lot of people are talking about it. So it's very exciting. Now I can say intermittent fasting just to like anybody I meet on the street, and they usually have heard of it now, which is very exciting. So yeah, there's other hybrid approaches. So there's alternate day fasting. So that's where you're completely fasting for one day, or eating like 500 calories one day and then having a normal eating day. Extended fasting is usually considered when you're fasting more than an entire day or day and night. So, usually that's around like 36 to 48 hours. Um, yeah. So that's intermittent fasting
That's amazing. Do you do it every day, or you take some day breaks where you just have normal meals
every day.
every day? Nice,
Mm-hmm.
nice. That's where we're gonna have a little debate, because I'm curious about a couple of things. But yeah, in general, like the science behind it. I mean, it's been around for a while. It's just in the recent years that it's becoming more trendy and so on. But it totally makes sense from so many point of view. From an ancestral point of view, right? If you think our ancestors, they were not eating 6 meals a day. They will wake up in the morning, go hunting, and then eat in the evening, right? They will probably eat one meal a day. And from a survival standpoint, it only makes sense that we are made to thrive on ketones. And if we were relying just on sugar and glucose and eating a meal every 3 hours, probably from an evolution standpoint we will not be here. And like you said, the benefits behind it are like enormous. Like the insulin get regulated, normally you get more energy, you lose weight. I never started it with the idea of losing weight, but it's a nice side effect. Even considering that you do so without cutting on calories. It's convenient. You don't yeah, you don't have to. You save time, you save also money from one point standpoint. um, my question is, I think, and this is something I'm very curious about hearing your opinion about two factors in general. First of all, intermittent fasting for girls, and you kind of replied that because there is, I was doing an interview with Biohacking Brittany, for example, and she was saying that she personally takes a break during when she has a period, because she found that doing intermittent fasting while she has the period can put her hormones a little bit out of whack. But then I have other people, you one of those, but even other people that I know that do it every day and they have no problem. What's your view about it for girls specifically?
Yeah. So that's a really, really great question. So, okay, I have so many thoughts about. First of all, just from a clinical scientific literature perspective, and I've actually been diving deep into this recently, like today, like the past few weeks, because I'm prepping to interview one of the probably most well-known people who talks about female hormonal health, and she also is very passionate about intermittent fasting not being good for women. So I've been really reviewing the literature recently, and then I can also speak to the anecdotal thoughts about it as well. But I think if you're just looking at the clinical literature, because oftentimes people like to use the rodent studies as examples of why intermittent fasting is not appropriate for females, because studies pretty consistently in female rodents show that it can have negative effects on the female rodent's reproductive system or their hormones or things like that. The problem with that, so it's great that we can do rodent model studies, but when it comes to female reproduction, rats, so female rats are reproducing a lot. So, so it's a faster sped up timeline. And it's much more likely to stop, like it's much more sensitive to that. And then on top of that, the studies in rats, and this is something that people, and this applies to anything, not just to the studies in rats for female reproductive hormones, but any studies in rats on fasting, what you have to keep in mind is that a rat fasting they'll often do it for like, a 24-hour fast. And you're like, okay, so that's like a 24-hour fast in humans. No, it's not. A 24-hour fast in a rat is like days and days and days in humans. So in a way, I just don't even know how much information we can extract from those studies, because a female fasted rat for 24 hours is like a female fasted human for days and days and days, which is going to have a much different effect than fasting during the day for a female. And okay, so that's my caveat about that. When you look at the human studies in females, they're pretty favorable. I was reviewing this a lot recently, and they've done a lot of studies in Ramadan in women, which I think is a really nice population to look at, because that mimics the intermittent fasting protocols a little bit, like pretty well, that people might do, with the exception of they're not drinking water, I guess. But I was just looking at a study last night, and I was looking at females during Ramadan and reproductive health, and it found absolutely no effect. There's been a lot of studies on women with PCOS and fasting typically has a really beneficial effect on that. And then again, on top of that, fasting has so many benefits for like insulin sensitivity and all of these things that can help metabolic health, that I think it can be really, really helpful for women. And then I'll start with the positives and then I'll go to the caveats. Also, anecdotally, so my co-host Jen, like I said, she had Facebook groups with hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of members, and so many women finding so much success with intermittent fasting. The caveat to all of this is, I think if you are, and I should preface. I should start all of this by saying I'm not a doctor. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a fertility expert. I'm not a hormone expert. None of this is medical advice. This is literally just my thoughts. I just sit around and think about things, and this is my thoughts. I think women, so yes, women's bodies compared to men's bodies are much more sensitive to stressors and much more sensitive to nutrient and energy availability. And women, between men and women are much more likely to experience, I think, negative hormonal effects from fasting, because the body is so sensitive to that. And it can be very easy for women to get too restrictive with fasting. So fasting too much, so it's too restrictive, or they're not just fasting, they're also restricting what they're eating. Mm-hmm. So while I don't believe that fasting itself has a negative effect, like is a bad thing for women, I think if you're doing it in a restrictive way, hands down, it can be a problem. So I think it can be a really slippery slope for a lot of women. And I'm all about living intuitively. I was going to say eating intuitively, but I actually have,
Mhm.
that would be a whole nother conversation. I have a lot of thoughts about that. Because I think modern food is engineered to trick us. So I don't think that you can always intuitively eat with the food that we have, that we are exposed to. But going back to the fasting, I'm all for women, living intuitively in their bodies. And so you're talking about the girl that you interviewed saying that she, during her period, felt like fasting was not appropriate. And I think that's great, like listening to your body. Yeah. So I think over restriction is definitely a problem. I don't think over restriction is a synonym for fasting, but I think it often materializes that way, or it's often treated that way.
Uh, I thought I totally agree with you, and I think something, Melanie, and correct me if I'm wrong, that we should specify is that fasting, intermittent fasting, or whatever type of fasting you do, is an hormetic stressor. So it's a stressor that is good for you, and what doesn't kill you make you stronger. However, is still a stressor, and I think what people, especially people who are getting started, do wrongly in the beginning is that, first of all, I believe when you try something totally new, let's say someone that has had 3 meals a day, sugary meals, for 20 years of their life, and then they go all in to 1 meal a day right away. That's probably not going to work, especially in the beginning, because that's doesn't become an hormetic stressor anymore. It's just like a stress, because you're making a radical change all of a sudden. I think it should be done gradually, especially for people that are starting out. And I think another thing that is worth mentioning is that hormetic stresses are good, but I think a series of hormetic stressors put together already in a stressful period of life of an individual, that might be damaging. What I'm trying to say is that if you are, this at least applies for me. I'm not saying it applies for everyone. If you have a lot of stresses in your life, um, I would suggest if someone has to start it for the first time, doing it, don't do it on a time when you're very stressed and a lot of things are not working for you in your life. Just still be, or if you notice that it's not working for you in the beginning, just do it gentle. Don't do 24 hours right away. Start with 12 hours, start with the basic, and then maybe build it up. I think so many people that just go all in too much too soon, and then again it becomes too much for some people, and that point they get discouraged and they pull back. I think this is one of the most common mistakes that people do. And the second common mistake that people do is that, like you said, we should not cut on calories. It just, switching the eating is just a different eating window. A lot of people do the mistake of not just doing 1 or 2 meals a day instead of six, but then they also cut calories on those meals. This is something that, even with friends and so on, I see so often that they were restricting eating, meaning like eating less calories, and then they keep that restricting, that less calories, smaller meals on the intermittent fasting. And that's what I think is too much. People should be reminded that when you fast, when you have your meal, when you have your feast, that the feast is I believe is the most important thing and factor of the intermittent fasting, because that's where you are replenishing your body with micronutrients and micronutrients to to get better. And a lot of people do those mistakes, that when they eat too little, or they eat not good enough, right? Processed food and so on. And that means that the intermittent fasting will just solve everything. I think this is a clarification that is worth doing.
Oh yeah, I thought all of that. That was so many great thoughts. Yeah, speaking to the part about jumping all in right at the beginning compared to going in slowly, I think it depends on what type of person you are. So I think that does, like you said, become a huge hurdle for so many people, where if, some people just are not like for me, I'm the all or none type of person. So like I have to just jump in. Like if I try to like go slowly, I'll never get there. Like I'm like I very much jump in and try it, and like, but that's the way I am. And I think a lot of people are not that way. And it's much more approachable and sustainable if they, go slowly and slowly lengthen their fasting window or slowly shorten their eating window. Um, and then the part about the stressors building up and how, it is a hormetic stress. It kind of reminds me of the concept of the allostatic load, which is basically that we have our bucket of stress and there, is a certain point that we can handle. And if there's just too much there, that's when it just tips over and things just can crash and burn. And like for me, especially doing fasting for so long, I feel like it reduces my stress. Like it really serves as like a stress reduction thing for me, but especially for a lot of people in the beginning, it will be a stressor, and it is biologically a stressor, just by the very nature of it. So yeah, taking into account the entirety of your life, like you said, is just so important. And then I think a lot of people, they'll want to count calories while the fasting, like they'll want to combine it because they'll think, oh, get more bang for my buck, more bang for my buck. But honestly, you don't have to count calories. You're actually most likely going to eat less calories without even meaning to. That's actually one of the biggest debates. A lot of the people who say, a lot of people will say intermittent fasting just works because it's calorie restriction. Like it just naturally leads to calorie restriction. And so that's why you have all the benefits. Um, I do not believe such is the case. I think it has a lot of benefits that go beyond calorie restriction without a lot of the downsides of calorie restriction. But yes, paying attention to get like you said, the feasting time is so important. That's when you're actually building and rejuvenating and creating your future body. And I think treasuring that and eating to satiety and eating nutrient rich foods, especially in our modern environment where the food is very much depleted of nutrients and full of processed foods. I think it's so important. I'm currently reading Dr. Robert Lustig's book, Metabolical, which is all about the lies and the problems with the processed food industry. And listeners, oh my goodness, definitely read it. It's just it's really eye-opening for the travesties of our modern food system.
What is the name of the book again, Melanie?
It's called Metabolical.
Okay, metabolical. Right in show notes. Oh, perfect. I'll link that in the show notes. I love a book suggestion, a reading suggestion, every time. Do you think in reply to your thing? Yeah, I agree with you. I don't think it's the caloric restriction, the benefit of it for everything, just for health in general and for losing weight. When I started it, I was counting the calories. Making sure that I did not cut the calories and I still lost weight. But do you think over the years people will reach a plateau by doing that every day, every year for indefinitely?
Well, so are you saying if you are calorie restricted indefinitely or fasting without calorie restriction
Uh,
indefinitely?
Fasting without calorie restriction.
Fasting without calorie restriction. Yes, I think most people will. I mean, we can't lose weight indefinitely. Like it's not going to happen. You're not going to
Sure.
lose. I'm trying to think about like the actual logic of this. You're not going to, I mean, you can't lose weight indefinitely so that you're nothing. That doesn't happen. Most people do reach new quote body set points, which I think are very real things. Like I know people will say that they're not a real thing, but I do feel like they are. I feel like the hypothalamus, um, regulates where your given body weight seems to be. And, when people lose weight with intermittent fasting, I do think they reach points where, it's like their body is happy at that weight and or their current intermittent fasting protocol matches like it matches where they're at with their body. And I if you want to learn more about the body set point, um Jonathan Baylor, who I'm having on the show, he has a book called I have to look it up. He has a book about the set point. I think it's called like the set point. I'm not sure. It's Jonathan Baylor is his name, and the book is about the set point. But it's really, really fascinating, the research on the set point. I mean, it just goes to show that we can't think of things in terms of calories in, calories out, because if it was about particularly lose the amount of weight that they should lose based on the calories that they're eating, and they just don't. Like, like in studies, it's never the amount of weight that they should gain in a calorie surplus situation.
Mhm.
So the body seems to do a pretty good job of maintaining within a certain weight range, that weight range, regardless of how much food you don't eat or regardless of how much food you throw at it. So yes, with fasting, I think people easily reach new quote set points. And if you still want to lose weight more beyond that, I think there are a lot of tips, there are a lot of tweaks you can make to what you're eating. Doesn't necessarily have to be calorie restriction. I think there's a lot of tweaks you can make to what you're eating to lose more weight beyond that if you so desire.
Can you tell us a couple of those?
Um, yeah. So I'm just gonna assume. Okay, let's say that you're just eating well, if you're eating a standard American diet, you have a lot more to play with because there's a lot of stuff you can try. But let's just say you are eating a standard American diet. So the first thing would be switching to a whole foods diet, not an unprocessed diet. If that's the only change you make, you're probably going to lose weight. Beyond that, if you're eating equal macros, so carbs, fat, protein, I think there's a lot of magic that can happen with either low carb, high fat or high carb, low fat. I do think both work. And I think the caveat is, well, two things. They have to actually be low, in that word low.
Mhm.
So high carb, so low carb, high fat, um, you know, likely you want it to be ketogenic. So people debate, what that means exactly, but um, I think like 10% or less carbs from the macros, or, the Atkins induction diet back in the day was, 20 grams of carbs. A lot of people seem to think it's between 20 and 50 grams of carbs per day, but actually low in the low sense. And then on the flip side, a high carb, low fat diet, actually low fat. So a lot of the studies on quote low fat diets will be in diets with like 30% fat. And I don't consider that low fat. Like I think it needs to probably be like 10% fat
Mm.
to get the metabolic benefits of that diet. And actually, so I was reading a study last night, which is a new caveat that I'm actually, when I record with Jen this weekend for the Intermittent Fasting podcast, I'm going to talk about this study. I found a study that looked at how obese patients responded to either low carb or low fat diets based on their level of insulin resistance. And it was crazy. So the obese patients who did not have insulin resistance, they lost like double the weight on high carb, low fat compared to low carb, high fat. But in the insulin resistant individuals, they lost much more weight on the low carb diet. So your baseline state of insulin resistance, likely determines one of the factors determines whether or not you lose more weight on high carb, low fat or low carb, high fat. And in that study, they considered insulin resistance, a fasting insulin of over 12, I think. I might be wrong. It was somewhere in that range. Sorry, did you say something? I think I heard you.
No. I just was saying that this is so interesting. This study came out. In fact, I'm gonna ask if you can send me the link later on. This is very
Yeah.
interesting. So you're saying that the one that had a low insulin sensitivity, they were better off with the high carb diet,
High carb, low fat.
high
Yeah.
carb low fat.
Oh, and these were calorie restricted diets. Very important. These were calorie restricted. So, yes. So the insulin sensitive overweight individuals lost more weight on calorie restricted diets if they were low fat. The insulin resistant overweight individuals lost more weight on calorie restricted diets if they were low carb.
This is so interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. Really interesting. Um, so that's a tweak that you can make, the macros. One of the biggest tweaks, I think, is if you have not cut out omega-6 fats, particularly vegetable oils, seed oils, just kick them to the curb. So these are things like corn, canola, cottonseed, safflower, sunflower, soy, sesame. I think that they play a major, major role in weight gain and inability to lose weight. So cutting those from the diet can be huge. Um, and I think keeping things like really, really high protein. Um,
So
yeah, when you think, or just the last thought is when you think about the like the biochemistry of food and how food is handled in the body, you realize that you can create an environment in your body by the food that you put in where it just makes fat storage not very likely to happen. And then if you have that coupled with fasting, you're likely going to be burning fat while fasted. So I think it really can catalyze that weight loss.
yeah, that is amazing. And also, while you were talking, I'm still thinking on the study in my mind. Sorry, it just blew my mind because I don't know. I was all for high fat, low carbs when it comes to a number of things, and I would never expected that a high carb, low fat will lead to better weight loss. That is incredible.
Oh, yeah,
But
can I comment? Can I
yeah,
comment on that really quickly?
yeah,
It's
yeah.
so funny. I'm trying to find the study so that I can actually tell you the quote of it, the title of it right now. But yeah, one of the first so because we get a lot of questions to the intermittent fasting podcast about not being able to lose weight and all this stuff. And one of the first things I suggest is, have you tried high carb, low fat? Because especially compared with fasting, and when I say low fat, I mean actually low fat. I don't mean like 30% fat. I mean like 10% fat. So carbs, one of the misunderstandings out there, people think that excess carbs become fat, and they can, but it's a very energetically expensive process, and it doesn't really happen that much. So what I mean by that is if you eat let's say you eat a diet of massive overconsumption of calories
Mhm.
and it's high carb, um, the weight gain that you gain on that diet is mostly going to come from whatever fat you're eating during that time, not as much from the carbs. Yes, the carbs can turn to fat in the liver um, through de novo lipogenesis, but it's not carbs don't easily become fat is the point is the point of that. So when you switch to a low fat, high carb diet, especially with fasting, when you're eating, you're not going to be creating much fat from that diet, even in a calorie surplus. So then when you are fasting, you'll be burning fat, but you won't really be necessarily putting in a lot more fat when you eat, compared to high fat, low carb, where it creates a fat burning state sort of, perpetually. So that's good. And it can be very satiating. So that's good. But it's very easy to store fat. If you think about it, why does so fat, we often think fat is a free food with insulin because it doesn't really create as much of an insulin response. So people think, oh, I can eat a lot of fat because fat doesn't release insulin, so it won't get stored. But in reality, the reason fat doesn't release a lot of insulin is because it doesn't need a lot of insulin to be stored. So the irony of the situation is fat is very easily stored as fat. And people kind of took it at the opposite. They took the idea that fat does not require a lot of insulin to be stored, means that it's not easily stored, when in reality, I think it's the complete opposite. Fat is actually very easily stored. Um, that was a whole tangent.
This is so interesting because this goes far from no, I wouldn't say far, but this is something that for me is new, and that's why for me it's very interesting to share, because I can tell you right now, I'm gonna dig deep into it right after this interview. I'm very, very surprised about it, positively surprised. That's great. That would explain a lot of things as well, but that's great. When
Oh,
you
I
say
found the study, by the way.
Ah, you found it? Oh, amazing.
Yeah, it's called insulin sensitivity determines the effectiveness of dietary macronutrient composition on weight loss in obese women. It was 2005 article. And yeah, so the difference was in obese, insulin sensitive women. Wait, let me find it. Okay. In obese, insulin sensitive women, when they did low fat, they lost around 13.5 pounds, while the insulin sensitive obese while the insulin sensitive obese women on low carb diets only lost about 6.8 pounds. So they lost like twice as much on high carb, low fat. On the flip side, in those that were insulin resistant, the obese women on low carb, high fat lost about 13.4 pounds compared to 8.5 pounds in the high carb group. So
Wow,
yeah.
that's interesting. Any match, it inversely matches as well. It makes so much sense. Do you know how many patients they tried this? Does it specify?
Yeah, it was in it was women aged 25 to 53, 12 insulin sensitive women and 9 insulin resistant women.
Just the same woman.
So like 20.
And I guess it's worth specifying that that uh, when we talk about carbs, fats, and so on, we always start assuming that are the good carbs, the good fats, and right is not just the when people if people want to try out those things, I guess I don't give advices. Obviously, we're just entertaining here and sharing our thoughts. But I guess always be mindful that there are good carbs, there are bad carbs. For good and bad, I mean like whole food versus highly refined, I guess. As if for fat, I mean excluding the fats that you said, the bad vegetable oils and so on, in favor of the good fats, salmon, avocado, extra virgin olive oil, and so on. Is that the case?
Yeah. So yeah, because I don't like, and you kind of said this too, like I get nervous about the words good and bad because it sounds like we're prescribing morality to food. But the way I see it, processed food, refined versions of these food, I don't really see it as food. It's
Mhm.
it's taking the refined version, it's taking the like sugar and refined grains and refined oils. It's just not in the normal context of food. So if we're saying good and bad, yes, 100%, I would say whole foods is what we're talking about with all of this. And actually, this is just a really random fun fact that I learned last night reading that metabolical book, um, the Robert Lustig book about the processed food industry. And I'm sorry, this is a tangent. He has a section on food fraud in the processed food industry, which blew my mind. Like things just being completely wrong, like just lies. Like when you go to the grocery store, like the food is not what it says it is. Do you know all this is what I thought about it? You said olive oil. He said virgin olive oil. Oh, I don't remember which percent. Um, it was a shocking amount of Italian virgin olive oil on the shelf is neither Italian nor virgin. Like it's just a lie. Um, so
Or
yes, when it comes here, go ahead.
yeah, no, on these I totally agree. And is unfortunately a lot of the oil that a lot of food manufacturing industries, they play around with that a lot. Sometimes even made in Italy, and I'm not just saying made in Italy. That's can be made in Greece and anywhere. Not that's not just for Italy, but if they can play around with words. If something has been, let's say, arrives from another country, and then it lands to Italy, and then they do something in Italy that they refine that things in Italy, that becomes made in Italy even if it's
Mm-hmm.
not. And that's the problem, number one. And second problem, like you said, a lot of talking about virgin oil, extra virgin olive oil, a lot of those, yes, they have the base concentrate that is extra virgin, but then they are diluted, which is very bad. And I guess You can also tell, like, if you get an olive and you squeeze it, the oil that comes out from it is very thick. If you just go on the supermarket and you get a bottle of oil and you shake it and you see that the consistency is almost liquid, that's almost a warning sign. And also, a bottle of olive oil should not cost $5 Australian. Obviously, I'm talking about Australian. Like, the process of making it is very expensive. And yeah, you're right. There is, unfortunately, even on the so-called healthy food, we know that they are healthy if they were made in the way they are supposed to be made. But unfortunately, sometimes we get things that we think that are healthy, but then we don't know what's behind it, and that they're being manufactured in a way that they're not what the label says it is. And I'm very glad that you say that, because it's something that I think people should be aware of. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, that's unfortunate. But I found my source of olive oil here. Is an Italian guy that importing from Italy, and yes, you can see the difference from the one that you get in the supermarket. You can put a fancy bottle on the supermarket and higher price, but you can tell the difference. You put it, and one is more liquid, one is more thick, and even from the smell, you can tell that it's stronger and it's more
Yeah.
acidic.
Yeah, no, that's you're gonna love his book because it's all of that stuff that you just mentioned, like how they changed country of origin. And apparently it first became like the consume or the we became more aware of it when it was like early 2000s when something happened with the meat industry where a huge percent it was found out that a huge percent of beef imported into the US contained horse meat or pork. It wasn't just beef.
Wow.
And that is kind of what started, awareness surrounding it. But apparently it's a huge problem because the entities in charge of this, like imports and stuff, they also want to maintain healthy relationships with the trade companies and testing, especially testing processed foods. It's really hard to test to
Yeah.
see if things are what they say, and it's expensive. And it made me really scared. I was like, oh my gosh, like
Mm.
I'm, I'm scared to like shop at the grocery store. Oh, and the fish industry. Oh my goodness, the seafood industry. It's crazy how often they mislabel on purpose. Like the fish is not the fish that they say it is. Yeah, it's very shocking.
Yeah, no, it's shocking. And do you know about salmon, for example? The farm salmon is pink or orange, whatever color it is, because they add coloring into it.
Yeah.
Farm
Yep.
is colorless, as opposed to wild caught salmon, which is naturally that color. Yeah, there is so much. I think people are better off. I think that's why, in the blue zones, and that's, obviously for another topic, blue zones, the areas, for people who don't know, the areas where you have the highest concentration of centenarians, and people tend to live longer despite maybe doing a lifestyle that has nothing to do with biohacking and, a label of being healthy. They drink and do a number of things that are supposed to be unhealthy, um, but despite that they still live long lives and healthy lives. I think the major point there are a lot of number of patterns, but I think the major point there that makes people live longer is the fact there are small villages not exposed to EMF and things like this, and also that the food that they eat is real food. The meat that they eat is from the local farmer. The wine that they drink is from the local farmer, and same for fish and so on. So I think the mention that you've done is very important, because it's not about what type of food you eat. There is olive oil and olive oil. There is meat, different type of meats. It can be the same food, the same piece of meat, but that same piece of meat can have, the source of it, where it came from. It made all the difference.
100%. I could not agree more. I'm so fascinated by, the blue zones and longevity. And um like one comment about it though is people often say that these blue zones are, and this would be a whole nother topic, but they'll use it to support like vegan diets because they'll say that, they're very plant-based, but it seems that in general, with the exception of Loma Linda, most of the long-lived population, or all of the long-lived populations, have some amount of meat. And then there are long-lived populations that actually have high amounts of meat, but they're not often included in those 7 countries that are used as examples. But I do think it goes so much, like you said, so much far beyond that. Like it's where they're getting their food from, the environment, the community. I just finished a book. Jim Levy has a book coming out. He's the one who does, it's called the Influencers Dinner. I think it's just in the US. But he has a book coming out called You're Invited. It's not about health. It's about connections and influence and networking and stuff like that. But this blew my mind. I did not know this. Do you know, okay, in Sardinia, which is one of the longest lived populations, do you know what was most linked to longevity?
No, but I'm very curious to know what it is.
So, okay, I'm gonna tell you what it is, but then there's a caveat, which is what's surprising. So, because I would have guessed this, I think I would have guessed this. If it was multiple choice, I might have guessed this. So it was relationships, but there was 2 types of relationships. So the second most relationship linked to longevity was your close relationships, which that's what I would have thought would have been number 1. But number 1, so the thing most linked to longevity in Sardinia was the number of loose associations that you have every day. So basically, it's like the number of people that you interact with every day. So not like how many best friends do you have, but just the random people, like the grocery store person, the person outside, the neighbor, like all the just random little people that you interact with. The higher that number, that was what most correlated to longevity. Isn't that interesting?
This is so interesting, and I think should be an encouragement of people to do the same. Right now we live in a society that we almost ignore each other sometimes, right?
Yeah.
On the train, and yeah, it's very interesting. And to be honest, how good does it feel when you just waiting on the queue and you have a chat with a stranger? I don't know. It feels good. If you tried it, like I've got, when you said that, like you just brought up memories of my childhood. I grew up in a small suburb, not in Sardinia, in Naples, from the south of Italy, but very similar, where people just talk to each other if they don't know to each other. There is a lot of interaction, and it just reminded me that while you were saying that, and it's amazing. It feels good, but I would have never guessed that, to be honest.
Yeah, me neither. Yeah, same. Because you don't really think about it because you're not like, oh, I feel so good because I said hi to the girl next to me at the checkout. But you do, like all those little interactions just feel really, really good. And yeah, so I just think it's so important. Like for me, so I work from home, podcasting and blogging and Instagram and all this stuff, but I have to go every single day to the grocery store. Like if nothing else, I like to do a lot of errands, but I have to do some sort of errand because I have to get out. And I used to think it was because I needed to just leave the apartment and walk around. But now I think a huge part of it is just being around people and having those loose interactions. Can I throw out one more fun fact at you about longevity? A
Yeah,
guessing
yeah,
game?
absolutely. I love.
Okay.
Yeah.
In the Framingham Heart Study, what do you think was the factor most linked to longevity?
Hmm. I don't know. I
I can give you a hint
Yeah,
if
give
you
me a hint.
like. I
Yes.
learned this when I interviewed James Nestor, who wrote the book Breath.
Okay. So the first things that come to mind is maybe not even meditation. The first thing is being mindful of when you do things.
Well, they don't really test that. So Framingham Heart Study is like it's all biological, like biomarkers.
Yeah.
So something about your body. Or maybe they do. I might have misspoken.
Level of
This is a
oxygen in the level of oxygen in the blood.
close.
Level of No, I don't know. I give up. Level of CO2 in the blood.
Sorry, I love guessing games, so this could go on for a long time. Lung capacity.
Lung capacity. Okay.
Isn't that interesting? And nobody talks about that.
Lung
But
capacity.
yeah,
Is
c-
that something that you can train,
change.
change? Yeah.
Um, yes, actually. So if people want to learn more, I definitely check out James Nestor's breath. It's all about obviously breathing, but yeah, he talks about lung capacity and yeah, you can increase it. But yeah, so breathing, so people and breathing, super important for longevity.
Wow. Well, if you think about it, we can't stay, we can't survive a few weeks without food, a few days without water, but we can't survive more than a few minutes without air. So I think, the more we cannot survive with a certain element, the more important it becomes, I think. Yeah, that's so interesting. Does it share resources of how to, on top of the classes that we know, the breathing techniques, meditation? I guess those are the first two that comes to mind to increase lung capacity.
Yes, he has a lot of studies. He has a lot of exercises and examples of things you can do. It's really confusing because there's benefits to oxygenating, but then there's benefits to under oxygenating, like CO2.
Mhm.
So, one chapter will be like how to breathe more, and then the next chapter it's like how to breathe less. But it's all very with a purpose in mind. But I don't remember exactly what the exercises were for lung capacity, but there was definitely information in it.
Wow, that's great. I can tell you something that when I'm stressed, I can definitely tell that if I try meditation and I know I'm stressed or preoccupied or anything, my oxygen capacity just goes down significantly. Like my long inhale is not that long anymore. Like I can tell that after a while it stops, contrary to when I'm, I guess, on a more relaxed state where I can get more oxygen in. So it could also come down on top of training and breath work. That's for sure. Could also come down to stress. Maybe that can be an alternative association.
Yeah, no, it's amazing. Just viscerally, I think what you can experience, if you're stressed and then you notice you're stressed and then you just take a long, slow, deep breath and it just turns on your parasympathetic nervous system and can have such a profound effect. So I'm a huge fan of breathing. Have you ever tried Wim Hof's method?
I actually did, and I know that I don't do that enough because when I did, through a friend of mine who is listening to this podcast, his name is Alessio, two friends of mine, and Mirko, they made me try that for the first time, and yes, pretty profound.
Yeah, it's a crazy experience. And I to this day, when I got to interview him, that was honestly the most inspiring, motivating, inspirational conversation I think I've ever had. He's insane. So
Wow, you
yeah.
interviewed him? I didn't know that.
Hmm. Yeah.
Can I ask you for an introduction?
I can try. I can try. I
I know
don't
it's
know how busy he is, but yeah, I know it was insane. I was yeah, he's crazy.
Wow, that's amazing. Yeah, no, he's I guess when you find, I'm very fascinated when you find people who practice something or advocate something and they look, and for look, I just don't mean the aesthetic look. I mean the look, even the energy and so on, that they look great, meaning that they just, him is just like a source of energy. You can tell
Yeah.
how much energy, and he's funny as well, and so how much energy he has. And I'm not sure how old he is, but there are not many people at his age that they can do, and not even way younger than him, then they can do what he does. And it's not just about things he does. It just, you can tell that he's just full of energy and full of life. So whatever he's doing, you must be doing something very right.
Yeah, for listeners, Wim Hof, he holds the most world records. I don't know if it's like in his category or like ever. He has so many world records. He's climbed Mount Kilimanjaro like barefoot.
Yeah,
He
absolutely
has
good.
Yeah, he has like the longest, like he does ice baths. He's a wonder of a man. And his three things are his breath work, his cold exposure, and meditation. So he's amazing.
Yeah, he did also the Mount Everest, and it was
Yeah.
up without clothes, and it was like super cold. No, he's great, and yeah, I know it's pretty popular. Well, everywhere really, but in Australia, it's like very well known. But I still, for those who don't know, like, yeah, they should go and and check his work because it's amazing. It's one of those things that really can change your life.
Yeah, 100%. And I was always a huge fan of the cold. Like I love the cold, but then reading his books, now I understand the science behind it. And my new favorite thing, I know you've seen it on my Instagram. I'm obsessed with cryotherapy. I'm just so obsessed.
Yeah, I saw it. I saw you done a lot of cryotherapy now. You're doing it, and it's great. I have a friend here. He has a clinic, and he has cryotherapy too, but I've never done it. So, but you do it
Oh,
quite regularly, right?
yeah, I'm going almost every single day that I can. I went today. Oh, it's so good. For listeners, you go into a chamber and it gets down to, so I'm doing it right now at negative 200. The one I'm going in can go down to negative 220,
Fahrenheit.
but you go
Fahrenheit.
Fahrenheit. Yeah. So I've been doing 3 minutes at negative 200. I don't know if I can go to the next level, the negative 220.
Oh, I
It's a little
think,
bit cold.
yeah, I think you can do it. For how long did you do it again?
3 minutes.
3 minutes. Okay. Well, for those who are listening, cryotherapy, the very first benefit, it has a number of benefits, but the very first benefit or the main benefit that I think will be for me is activation of brown fat. And brown fat is the good fat, let's call it this way, that we don't have much as an adult. And most of it is behind our neck. And once it's activated, it does a lot of stuff, a lot of pretty good stuff, not just for weight loss, also for general maintenance. I think it releases and activates stem cells, but that's just one of the the many benefits of cryotherapy that comes to mind.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of brown fat. It's basically like a metabolically active fat that its purpose is to burn energy to create heat to warm you up. So it burns calories, and yeah, it's really great. I think I love for the cold. I love the inflammation. It's so anti-inflammatory.
Yeah.
Just clears my head, and the mood effects. I walk out. You feel so good when you walk out of it. And I was reading study on it recently. They were looking at people with depression, and they found that it significantly reduced depression, and it was in 50% of them. It made like an 80% difference, I think, doing the cryotherapy. So yeah, I love it. It feels great.
Wow, that is amazing. Well, Melanie, like I told you at the beginning, I want to be very mindful of your time, and you've been very kind. You've been over the hour with me, and I want to tell you, I really appreciate it because I know how busy you are, and I know there is also evening now, is approaching evening. Um, I've had other question for continuous glucose monitor and etc. But I think we covered quite a little bit of information for listeners. But I invite them to go and check your Instagram and the show notes as well. For those who want to find more about you, how can they? Yeah, what can they do?
Thank you so much for having me, Renato. This has been absolutely amazing. And it's so wonderful. We are so similar in just the things that we try and our perspectives. And I feel like what we're doing, just everything that you said today, just really resonated with me. And it's wonderful. It's really wonderful. So I'm honored to be here. And yeah, so for listeners, like I said, I have the two podcasts, the Intermittent Fasting podcast and the Melanie Avalon Biohacking podcast. I post a lot of this on Instagram, like Renato said. So I share a lot there. And then I do have 3 Facebook groups. The main one is IF Biohackers.
Mhm.
The other two, I have one for, you just mentioned CGMs. I have one for, it's called like, I forget what it's called. It's like Lumen Biosense CGMs. It's for people who are want to measure like ketones or carbs or fat burning, or CGMs. And then I have a clean beauty and safe skincare Facebook group if you're interested in that, because I am very, very passionate about the role of endocrine disruptors in skincare and makeup today. So yeah, the Facebook, if you just search Melanie Avalon in Facebook, you'll find the groups.
They'll pop up. And plus, for those who are listening, I'm gonna add whatever links I can in the show notes. So, make life easy for them. Just go in the show notes and click on those links. And I really invite them to follow the groups. I will follow the other groups. I was not aware that you have more than one. I followed the intermittent fasting one, and it's amazing. So I'm assuming that the other ones on different topics must be as good as the intermittent fasting one. So
they're more niche. So they're smaller. They're only like 1,000 or so members. But if you're interested in either of those things, the clean beauty and safe skincare, or the lumen, CGMs, ketones, all of that, they're a great place to be.
yeah, no, I'll definitely go and check them, and I invite people to do the same, even because I had so many other questions for you, but I had to be mindful all the time. I want to be respectful, because if you leave that just to me, that could go on for another 2 hours, that.
Oh yes. This is my problem. Not my problem, but I love talking about all this stuff with really wonderful people. Yeah, I could talk for like hours, so you got to stop me. So
No, I love it. I love it. And, that was one of my mistakes at the beginning when I started podcasting. I honestly get carried away. Not with I have to say, not with everyone, with some people I do my interview and that's it. I have to be honest, I don't want to be the good Samaritan, but with some people, I just could not stop. There is, each question just leads to 10 other questions. And I love it because it just feeds my curious mind. And you're one of those people, Melanie. Like, literally, if I tell you I could go over for another couple of hours, I could probably do that. Yeah, you're such an interesting person, and you have so much passion with it. And other things I had to say, like, you look great. I love when people look great, and for look great, I mean everything. You also look great, but when they advocate something and they look and feel healthy, that means something is working. When I go to my doctor, I mean, my doctor is great now, my functional doctor, but I don't know, sometimes I was going to doctor, and when I was younger, like in Italy, and the doctor was like, fat and bald and clearly unhealthy, and it was telling me, you should do those things to feel healthy. I don't trust this type of this type of people. I think people who just, if they advocate something, they should look healthy, and you definitely do. And not just for the look, for the energy and the passion that you have, because I think that comes down to energy as well. And you definitely have all of that.
yeah, I just to comment on that really quickly. I do think that a lot about the doctors and where we're getting help from. But I do want to draw attention to, so even though like I look healthy, which thank you so much. I still, like, this all came out of my own challenges and struggles, and I still have my own struggles. Like, I'm still trying to figure out my anemia issues, and I'll have gut dysbiosis. So I just say that to encourage people that you know even if you can have your own challenges and journeys, and things don't have to be perfect. But I think the energy aspect of it can come from so many things that we're doing, and the diet, the lifestyle, the biohacking, but also just your mindset surrounding it. I think that is so important. So for people on their own challenges and struggles, even if they feel like, oh, I don't look healthy or feel healthy, you got this. Like, you can just keep trying and keep doing what works. And there's so much that can happen. And you can just keep researching and finding the people that can really help you, like you said. So if your doctor is not, you know, not on the same page and not aligned with your goals, you can always find somebody new. But thank you for saying that.
No, it's true. I really mean it. And I'm glad you mentioned that. I think approach is everything. I think like I want to share something. Like in this period, like this present moment, as I'm recording, I had those recent weeks, two bad news, right? Okay. One, I was heartbroken and from someone, but it's okay. That happens. And secondly, and which is the most important thing, is I found out that my mom has cancer, right? And she's in Italy, I'm in Australia. And I tell you why I want to share this with people, because I think mindset is a very powerful thing. You have two choices when things don't work in life. Choice number one is just letting go and just doing nothing about it. And choice number two is just embracing, detach yourself, and just make that your motivation to do better in life in general. And yeah, I just want to share that with people. I think coming down to what you're saying before, I made this example, but it comes down to what you were saying before, that people have health challenges and they should not be discouraged. They should make that as their power. Because at the end, you as well, you're Melanie Avalon. I think your initial trigger was your discomfort with your health, and that made what you are today. And that's beautiful. Yeah, just wanted to share that before we close.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I'm really sorry to hear that. And so I'm sending you over the interwebs love and support and good energy. And I could not agree more. I'm so happy that you do have that wonderful mindset surrounding all of it. And yes, I think it's so, so important. So we just got to keep spreading it and sharing it.
Yeah, we will. We will.
All
Melanie,
right.
thank you so much. I'm sure you're gonna enjoy your dry farm glass wine.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Yep.
And I really appreciate that you took the time for doing this. Really.
No,
So
thank you for having me, Renato. I really, really appreciate it as well. And have a good day, because it's early for you there, right? It's like the morning.
yes, yeah, the day is morning, and yeah. So thank you, and have a good evening.
You
Yeah.
too. I'll talk to you later.
Ciao, Melanie. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye bye.
Hey there, thanks for listening. Before we conclude, I'd like to remind you something very, very important. This episode, as well as this podcast in general, is for general informational purposes only and does not constitute medical advice. Listeners should not disregard or delay in obtaining medical advice for any medical condition they may have. Please, if you have any medical condition, consult your physician first. Disclaimer given, I would love for you to subscribe to this podcast and to leave me a review. That will help me a lot. We're just starting out. We have already a lot of great interviews down the line, which you don't want to miss. So hit the subscribe button so you will get notification for the next exciting episode. I'll see you next time.
Hey there! If you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain. It's free. There's creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. In fact, I'm recording this from your phone right now. Anchor will distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many other platforms. You can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. And it's everything you need to make a podcast all in one place. So go ahead, download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started.